What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me here on episode 13 of the 90 Feet from Home Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Joe Orico. You guys can check me out over on Twitter at Joe Orico99. That's where I put out all of my new fantasy baseball work, podcasts, articles, stuff that goes out directly onto Twitter. You guys can check that all out at Joe Orico99. We have a very special guest joining the show today. Back-to-back guest episodes for us. If you missed yesterday's with David Mendelson, please do go check that one out. But we are joined today by Jeff Erickson. He's a senior editor and co-founder over at RotoWire. You guys can find his work over on Twitter at Jeff_Erickson. We're going to be talking about some surprise breakout SPs. Jeff, I really appreciate you joining me today. How you been?
Of course, happy to do it. Doing well. And there are so many surprise starting pitchers, and in fact, you know, kind of one of those things you're going through. You usually like you go through like the earned auction values. You look at the players. Okay, yeah, a lot of the aces are acing. No, not this year. That's not the case, and we have a lot of guys that have pushed up. Even like some of those that we expected good things from have outpaced our expectations, like Chris Sale. Hey, he's healthy and he's back to elite form. And then we've had a lot of starting pitcher injuries, and we've had others fall back. It's been an interesting year with a lot of different names changing places.
There's not a lot that really makes sense. We've had so many high-end starting pitchers go down, even going back to last year, because we're missing a lot of guys that were injured in 2023 as
Right.
well, that we kind of forget about, the Alcantras and the McClanahans of the world. And yet, whenever I look at my teams, it seems like the pitching is stellar, and my teams go 2 for 23 every single day with a single run scored. It's counterintuitive based on how many arms we've lost, but I mean, these guys have just come out of nowhere and are giving us incredible seasons. I don't know how sustainable a lot of it is, but we are going to be breaking down probably about 10 or 12 names today that are just kind of coming out of the blue and have been kind of SP1s. I do want to give you a chance, though, Jeff. Just let everybody know what's going on at RotoWire. Anything you want to plug before we get going?
Thanks. Appreciate it. First of all, you can check out everything we have at RotoWire just to get a peek behind the paywall. RotoWire.com/pod is your ticket there. No credit card required. Just put in a valid email address and off you go. You get a couple of days free for behind the paywall. Of course, we have all sorts of strategy articles, news. I like the customization tools. Our My Leagues feature, which you can plug into our projected starters grid. I find that invaluable on Sundays when you're trying to look for starting pitchers to pick up, especially if you're like me and you play in a bunch of leagues. You can just go, league by league by league. Okay, he's got 2 starts and is available. Oh, he gets the Mariners, so we can stream some strikeouts. Oh, he gets the he gets the White Sox. Okay, we can get a win there. Those sort of things are so important because when you've got so many leagues and you got Sunday Fab all at the same time, really help to, anything you can do to streamline the process really helps. So rotowire.com/pod gets you everything there. And of course, I talk a lot. I'm on the RotoWire podcast. I'm on SiriusXM Fantasy. I'm on from 12 to 2 Eastern time, Monday through Thursday. Sundays, I'm on from 1 to 3 Eastern time, and I'm on 3 days a week on the RotoWire Baseball podcast too.
Jeff's doing great work. You got to be checking out everything he's doing on the written side, on the audio side. Lots of audio, just like me. We're talking as much as we possibly can. Something that you mentioned, it's just the amount of leagues. If you're doing Sunday Fab, it's very hard for me. This is the most leagues I've ever done. I did 14 leagues this year. I figured more and more getting into the content side.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be playing more, but I think next year I'm going to take a bit of a step back because my Sundays are now Fab days, and I spend 3 or 4 hours, and it's a lot. I'm not terribly great at Fab. I don't know if you saw, I tweeted out the other day, I picked up Mike Trout in TGFBI. For $240, he got dropped. That was the only league where he was dropped, and the runner-up bid was 42 or something like that. So still got a lot of ways to go
Sure.
in terms of Fab. But I thought that one was all right. I mean, I thought that there would be a bit of a frenzy for Mike Trout, but not really. Not really. I guess people are kind of nervous, but when there's a potential first, second rounder that becomes available, I don't know. Am I crazy for bidding 240 on him, you think?
I think, well, first of all, there's 2 things. One, you don't know when he's exactly coming back, and it's always tough to stash. There are no IL spots in TGFBI or any NFBC platform, so that's tough right there.
Yeah.
And after this latest injury to his knee, is he going to run like he did earlier this season? If he's not, then I find that it might be tougher to go huge on him. But yeah, but still, it's a regular bat, possibly elite bat skills still. I get it. I think if you knew a return date, a more specific return date, I think maybe that would change things. You're getting in on the ground floor early, so that's the thing that makes it tough to go triple digits.
My reasoning was I've been first or second in my league. I've been hovering between 20 and 40 overall. So the team is pretty solid. And I've been pretty blessed in terms of who I drafted. I got a late Ranger Suarez, and I hit on Kyle Finnegan and a couple of guys that I drafted late. And I feel like I have 25 out of my 30 original players. It's just been a very something like that, 24 or 25. So I had about $800 still in fab. So I figured, you know what? How often is Mike Trout going to become available? It might come back to bite me on the rear end, but that's the fun. That is the risk we take here. But let's start talking about some of these pitchers. I think it's really interesting because I get a lot of questions. You probably do yourself about 10 and 12 team leagues. We play in a lot of 15s because that's a lot of industry leagues and a lot of NFBC leagues. But I get questions every day regarding 10 and 12 team leagues, and it's a picture of the pitching staff. And should I pick up? Sometimes it's a guy like Jack Flaherty, and it's like, absolutely. But then you got to be dropping a Christopher Sanchez or a Bailey Ober or somebody who deserves to be rostered. And it's just crazy with the amount of great starting pitchers that there are this year. There's just not enough of them. And a side note, before we really get into these specific pitchers, I've been advising people, if you're getting offered any great bat or any solid bat for any solid arm, I would be taking it at this point, just based on how the ball seems to be so dead this year. If you're able to get any offense, you should probably be doing it. I've heard some people saying they can get Austin Riley in exchange for, different kind of second, third tier level pitchers. Absolutely be doing that. If you're trading any of these guys for a Rosarena or any of these buy lows on the offensive side, I've been doing it just because offense is so hard to come by this year.
Absolutely. Snap call. I agree. It's the rare person that's just has no problems on offense, no problems with their hitting. We all have Fred and I were talking, like the top 30 hitters, like 13 of them have underachieved by a significant margin. Every day I look up and I see Gunnar Henderson going deep, and I turn and look at my roster, and I've got Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso at that 2-3 turn in the main event. Every day it's just a punishment. And now Lindor gets hit in the hand yesterday. Alonso gets hit on the hand today and leaves the game. Just come on, make it stop. I mean, it's just the universe is just yelling at me. And that's an Acuna team too. So you know how I'm doing right now.
Not terribly great. Let's start breaking down these pitchers and get off of the hitting topic, because those are it's tough to break down the offenses these days. But let's start with Tanner Houck. Tanner Houck, in his first season as a starting pitcher, as a full-time starting pitcher last year, things didn't go terribly well for him. He had a 5.01 ERA. Mm-hmm. The ERA estimators were better. They were generally in the low fours, but overall, I don't think there was a hell of a lot of interest coming into the year on Tanner Houck. There were some people for sure who had interest, but I don't know if anybody was expecting a 1.9 ERA through the first third of the season. He's cut his walk rate more than in half. We're only looking at a 4.6% walk rate. He's striking out a little bit more at 24%. It looks really good. Do you think this is sustainable with Tanner Houck? I do worry about pitchers in Fenway in general and the fact that, they can really get blown up in their home starts, but it's looked pretty good with Tanner Houck. Do you think he can keep this up?
I think there's a pretty good reason to be optimistic about him. I do worry about the ball flying out a little bit more the more he throws, but as the weather heats up a little bit, especially lefties in Fenway, I get all that. But like the K percentage has actually been better before. In 2021, he struck out 30% of the batters he faced. He when he was mostly a starter. Some of this is the way the Red Sox have treated Houck. Some of this is health. He doesn't throw as hard as he used to. In fact, that's almost seemingly, I've seen these pieces suggesting a little bit of that is by design. And his command is far superior than it's been in the past. That's the thing that really helps. Its location has been better and better than it's ever been.
I just don't know if I find myself really wanting to start him. Like, I still feel nervous about it.
Yeah.
Like, he's worth a roster spot, but like even the start against Milwaukee, I was thinking, okay, Milwaukee can really blow you up, and he has a great start there. There was 2 in a row against Tampa, who haven't been great, but he's done very well against them. Tampa just always kind of worries me. I think that's my Blue Jays fan PTSD. They've been
for sure.
They've destroyed the Blue Jays for the last, it feels like forever. Is Houck somebody that you're setting and forgetting, you think, or is it still somebody where if you see that there's a tough matchup, you're not really that interested? If it's the Dodgers, would you put him against the Dodgers or the Braves or those type of teams right now?
Well, that's obviously the question. Again, the mealy mouth answer is it depends, because like if it's 10 or 12 or 15, where I have Houck as a 15. But you're right. He hasn't faced Baltimore. He hasn't faced the Yankees. He hasn't faced the Astros or the Dodgers or the Braves. Now, he's faced some good rosters, but he's been very proficient at it. Obviously his worst start this year is a 4 earned run start against the Angels way back on April 12th, where he did get knocked around. Actually, he gave up 7 runs total. 3 of them were unearned. That's another thing that's reflective of the Red Sox, their defense being as bad as it is. Yeah. But yeah, I just love that he's never walking anybody. I think that's the thing that kind of gets me through it there. I think there's extreme cases maybe where I would avoid starting him, but it would have to be an extreme thing like Coors Field or like Yankee Stadium or maybe the Yankees in Fenway actually would be the thing that might scare me the most. But man, he's just the thing. I love that he's been so steady. He's been so consistent. He really should have more love than he's had fantasy wise so far. The Red Sox bullpen and their offense wouldn't have kind of fallen apart at times when he's been pitching. He probably deserves better than he already has.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many pitchers this year who deserve so much better. A lot of Detroit pitchers. We're going to talk about one in particular, but those guys are just getting no luck with their
Oh
wins.
yeah.
We've seen that a lot this year. You mentioned Tanner Houck and his really low walk rate. Let's talk about somebody who is walking everybody, and it doesn't seem to matter. That's Luis Heel. 13.1% walk rate. You'd think, okay, the guy can't be doing that well, right? 2.11 ERA. He's striking out nearly 32% of batters. And he's been one of the bigger breakouts. I think he might be the biggest breakout on this list. But the big problem is, and I talked about this yesterday with Mendy, they're going to have Garrett Cole back, and somebody's probably going to have to leave this rotation. Is it Heel? He probably doesn't deserve it, but it's probably either Heel or Clark Schmidt. What are your thoughts on what we've seen from Heel? And do you think that he'll be in the rotation when Garrett Cole comes back, or is he the likely one that's going to go back to the pen?
That's a tough one. This could be like a Turnbull situation, right? Where he may not deserve it, but deserves got nothing to do with it. It could be there where like, hey, we got to limit your innings this year anyhow. We'll find a way to do this because remember, Heel's coming off of injury rack. Well, he got Tommy John. He pitched one game in 2022 and 6 in the minors that year. 2 minor league starts last year. So there's there's going to be an innings cap of some sort. This is not going to be a 170 inning pitcher. So how do they get there? And that's the question. Do you shut it down and then try to ramp up? I mean, do you pull a Strasburg and shut them down at the end of the season saying, hey, we've got 5 starters? It's a tricky decision to make.
Yeah. The problem is too, like Garrett Cole's going to come back, but there's probably going to be some need for some starts. There's going to be an injury or whatever. It's a tricky situation. Like they're not going to want to overuse him, but they're probably going to be in probably have a playoff spot wrapped up within the last few weeks of the season. You'd imagine the American League East is not the same strength that it has been in years past. So this is a tricky one. I think if you can sell Luis Heel and get back something, you're selling off of that 2.11 ERA and the massive strikeout numbers you're getting, I think you're probably getting a pretty decent return. Is it fair to say that you should be trying to sell him now and just head off that trouble down the road?
Yeah, I think you should. As much as it stinks because he's getting so many strikeouts for you. You always sell highest and buy lowest. It's not just high, and it's not just sell high, it's sell highest. It's not just buy low, it's buy lowest. Right. So yeah, pitch that, like you said, Randy Arozarena for Luis Heel. I think that's an amazing idea.
Yeah, I would absolutely do it. Arozarena's been brutal. And actually, Todd had me on RotoWire on the weekend just talking with myself and Corbin about some of the rookie tout wars things. And we were talking about Randy Arozarena and how he's probably one of the bigger buy lows that there is right now. Is he going to have a 180 BABIP going forward? I'd bet a lot of money that he's not going to be that bad. And he's still got the homers and stolen bases. So yeah, if you can trade Luis Heel, as much as it might seem counterintuitive right now, you think you've locked onto an ace. Like we've mentioned, there's probably 15 aces sitting on your waiver wire if you're playing in a 10 or a 12 team league. So I wouldn't get too attached to Heel, especially with those walk issues. It's been better as of late, but that can still be something that comes back to bite him at any given moment. When you're walking 13% of batters, that can be tricky. I still really like him, but there are a number of ways this can go south if you are a Heel owner this year, I think.
You know what? I've got Heel and AL Tout Wars. I'm going to go make that offer right now. We'll see what happens. I got to figure out who's got Arozarena, but they're probably going to laugh at me and snap say no. But I need offense. I spent 200 of my budget on hitting, and yet my offense is killing me. My pitching's fine, but it's the offense. So Mike Podhorzer, expect an email soon here. We'll see what happens.
We'll be rubbing our lucky rabbit's foot for you over here. I'm not sure Mike's a listener, so you might be able to get lucky there. Let's talk about Ronel Blanco, because this one is confounding to me beyond anything that I've seen this year. I've gotten myself in some trouble because I don't really think he's that great. I think he's gotten by on some incredible luck. He has a 1.99 ERA, but he's stranded 92% of base runners. He's got about a 2+ run difference between his estimators and his actual ERA. The 200 BABIP, there's a lot of things here that I don't think are going to bode well for him. He's walking a lot of batters still. I've been on the Ronel Blanco sell high train, and he's made me look stupid now for 2 months. Is this eventually going to come back down to earth, you think, or is Blanco just a surprise breakout this year?
I bet you felt pretty good when he got suspended, right? You're like,
Oh, I
see,
did.
that's why,
And then he comes back and has another great outing.
yeah, against the A's, albeit, but
Yeah.
still. Yeah, I'm similarly wary. Uh, yeah, I think that's going to be a tough one. I mean, when the no hitter came against the Blue Jays, we're like, well, hey, that was against the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays. I mean, they got a great lineup. Oh, wait a second, maybe they don't. Ooh. But then he turns around and shuts out the Rangers over 6 innings. Like, okay. I mean, he hasn't had one bad stinker yet. I mean, the worst he's had is a 3-run outing. I mean, that's the thing that really is remarkable to me is the consistency. From start to start. There's a 3-inning game, but when he got caught, there and that, but then again, he was fine after that there. I know he turned a new leaf by throwing that changeup a lot more and obviously having a much better changeup than he's had in the past. It's one thing to throw it more. It's actually doing things too. So stuff is better, but how often do you see a 30-year-old like this kind of all of a sudden just gets such marketable huge improvement like that? That's not like a knuckleballer. He's not like R.A. Dickey doing that here.
We have fond memories of R.A. Dickey in Toronto, trading away the whole farm system for him. Syndergaard and Travis d'Arnaud. But, I mean, he was actually pretty good in Toronto.
And those guys weren't as good as we thought they were going to be either. So it didn't hurt as much, at least.
Yeah, we had Dickey as part of those playoff teams in 15 and 16, those heartbreaking teams where a Brett Cecil injury probably cost the Jays a spot in the World Series. But I won't go down that rabbit hole.
Never.
I will be here all day. Ronel Blanco, I just don't know how often we can expect a 30-year-old career minor leaguer to come up and then light the world on fire like this. I think this is a situation where you can get something back. And I think at this point, you can get something pretty nice back. Those first few weeks of the season where there's 2 or 3 good starts, people are going to say, okay, it's 2 good starts. Mm-hmm. Once it's 10 good starts, people start to believe it. And you can really start to fill some holes on your roster there. So I think that you should, and I've said this probably 10 times on this show and the previous one, if you can sell him, I would be doing it.
Yeah, I think you can, though, too. I mean, because he's pitches for a good team. Yeah. I mean, he came back after the suspension. The results were so good. That's going to help, too. And the fact that he's just had no stinkers at all.
Yeah, it's crazy. Somebody else who's kind of really taken me by surprise this year is Trevor Williams out in Washington. Another one, and it's kind of everybody on this list of, 2.29 ERA. He's got more strikeouts than he typically has, which is still not great at 21%. But last year we were looking at 16%. It was just like not good at all. But now he's startable, it seems, in a lot of cases. It's tricky because in your 10 and 12 team leagues, I don't know how much you trust it, but he's not getting by on a lot of BABIP luck or left on base luck. If anything, it's the homers that are going to eventually come back. A .35 homer per 9 is not really sustainable, but he's got a 373 xFIP. His Sierra is at 389. I think he can be serviceable down the line still here, at least in 15 teamers. What do you think about Trevor Williams, Jeff?
I can't. I just can't, Joe. 5 innings or fewer in the last 6 starts too, so you're not getting depth in your those outings there. Swing strike percentage and 9%. He's got the ultimate home run to fly ball luck right now, 3.8%. I'm just, you know what? Shame on me if it works out. Nothing against Trevor. I'm sure he's a fine human being. I just won't. He could be a fine human being on somebody else's roster.
I think he is a classic product of what I mentioned before. There's just not room for these guys. In years past, if you saw somebody through their first 8 or 10 starts have a 2.29 ERA, I think a lot of the time they're getting scooped up. Mm-hmm. In most cases. He's less than 40% rostered still on Yahoo leagues. And I know that's not the best barometer to use, but that's what a lot of people are playing. And there's no room for him. There's no room for a lot of these guys we're talking about. I think he will eventually come back down to earth to some degree. And he's probably not somebody to get too interested in. I think that there could be some 15 team value there, but a lot of pitchers are valuable in 15 teamers. Most of you guys, if you're playing in 12s and 10s, there's probably not much of a need to get invested here, especially with the amount of guys that we have. Another one here who's still available in, again, a lot of leagues and somebody who's been excellent this season, Reese Olson. He's below the 50% threshold still if we're talking about Yahoo. He's got a 1.92 ERA. Everything looks pretty damn good for Reese Olson except for the wins. He's got 1 win through 10 starts. but he's looked very good. I mean, is he going to be able to sustain, we're talking homer to fly ball. He's got a 2.1 homer to fly ball. That's not going to stick, but I think Reese Olson can be a pretty solid arm still.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jeff?
Obviously, he was extremely unlucky earlier in the season in terms of run support. His stuff was like, if you look at the stuff plus, it wasn't that high last year, but I feel like it's gotten better this year. Only the slider was considered an above average pitch last year. Again, home run to fly ball luck has been extremely lucky, 2.1%. For point of comparison, the benchmark is usually 10%, right? At least that's the way I've always viewed it as. Maybe it's a little less this year with the opposite of happy fun ball. It's just that the ball is just not carrying this year as much. So maybe, you lower that benchmark just a little bit there, but at the same time, his swing strike rate is over 12%. That's pretty good. It's not in Trevor Williams territory, for instance, there. He's young enough that he could get even a little bit better. He could refine his stuff. He's also young enough though, that, he could wear down, get hurt, things of that nature. I'm cautiously optimistic, Joe. Other worrying points is like the Detroit bullpen right now is a big fat mess. They really blew up over the weekend against your Jays. And I just don't think they're going to give them a ton of run support overall. So I want to like Reese Olson more than I do. I have him in a couple of places. I'm not looking to sell him. I'm not looking to go trade for him either.
Yeah, that's fair. Detroit's offense is not going to be exactly pouring on the runs for you. Poor Jack Flaherty, who I've been banging the drum for all year. This guy's got, I think, one victory. Maybe he's got two.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with Olson. Like, you'd figure with what is his ERA? It's below 2 at this point. You'd figure there'd be more than one victory to show for it. But it's a tough team to be pitching for sure. Cole Irvin is somebody that does have some track record of success. I remember in the 2022 season, there was a stretch there. I remember because it was my first year doing fantasy work. And Cole Irvin had a stretch where he was facing Houston and Toronto and the Yankees and so many teams that he should not have had success against. And he was really good. And he's shown that he can be kind of an under-the-radar quality arm. So far this year, he's 2.84 ERA through his first 50 innings, 8 starts, a couple relief appearances. I don't know that I'm overly optimistic, but Baltimore is not in a position of a lot of depth for their arms at this point. They lost Dean Kramer the other day and John Means. I think that Irvin has an opportunity, and I think at least in 15 teamers, he's worth a shot. I don't know if there's room, like I mentioned, in 10, 12 teamers, but I think in deeper formats, Cole Irvin's going to be pretty valuable, no?
Yeah, no strikeouts though. Just that's something to keep in mind. I like him as like a home streamer, with the caveat that someday Cade Povich might get a chance. If that's the case, I think that changes things up a little bit there. And we'll see how long-term the injuries are to Means and to Kramer. But Irvin's already been the first guy out before. So I think he's just like a streaming good matchups and at home, and then thank and dismiss him once those conditions change. I don't think he's a guy you kind of build around. You certainly don't trade for him. You just pick him up whenever you can in the 10s and 12s and stream him, and then just cast him aside once the setup isn't as great, because I just don't think this is super sustainable.
That's totally fair. I don't think that he's going to change the course of your team. He's likely not. More so to take a look at it in deeper leagues, and like Jeff said, if there's a nice matchup, if Oakland's coming into Baltimore or something like that, you have yourself a nice streaming opportunity.
Does get 2 starts in a row against the Rays coming up, though. So that I'd probably hold on to him for those 2, and then we'll figure it out from there. I think Atlanta after that, and that seems like a good time to stop.
It's weird we're talking about the Rays in terms of a good team to stream against. It feels like it's been a while since that's been a conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe, again, like I'm just scarred as a Toronto native watching what they've done to my teams for the last long time. But this feels like the first year in a while where Tampa's not really a juggernaut.
Yeah. Well, see also Rosarena as a starting point there. Josh Lowe is back on the IL. He's barely been active. So that's 2/3 of your outfield right there. And they're pitching. I mean, they've gone through so many different pitchers too. I mean, really, 3/5, almost 4/5 of the rotation is 4/5 of the rotations out if you count Eflin, Eflin, McClanahan, Springs, and Rasmussen. That's pretty tough to lose all that.
Yeah, I think I saw a report actually that Jeffrey Springs is pretty close. Oh no,
he had a setback. He had a setback with the shoulder.
I didn't see they shut him down. Oh my God. Oh, that's a shame. I really, really like Jeffrey Springs, but let's talk about somebody else who has been just really, really good this year. And this is somebody I got to tab Bubba here, our friend Casey Bubba, who I heard
Mhm.
mention him a few times in the preseason when I didn't hear a lot of people, and I don't want to say that nobody else did because I'm sure that there were others interested in Alec Marsh, but I don't think that there was a lot of people who were saying he was going to be this good. The strikeouts are not there where they typically have been in his time in the minors and even at the big leagues last year. They were a little bit
Mhm.
better, but he's got much better command this year. He's not walking nearly as many batters. Doesn't seem to be getting terribly lucky. The BABIP is a little bit low, but he seems to be, fairly sustainable. Again, like I don't expect Alec Marsh to start getting blown up here consistently. I think that he can be pretty solid, especially if those strikeouts do come once like they were in the minor leagues. What's your interest level on Alec Marsh right now, Jeff?
Yeah, I have him in some 12s, and I would definitely roster him in a 15. Couple things about the Royals. One, their defense is remarkably good by traditional metrics and by advanced metrics. They grade out very well. I think fewest unearned runs allowed in baseball so far. Whether Michael Massey's absence will change that up a little bit, I'm not quite sure, but they've been getting obviously Bobby Witt can pick it. And that starts there, but they're getting really good defense so far this season. And I think that really helps. Uh, Marsh, like you said, he's not getting as much swing and miss. He's also not giving up as many homers. Noticing a trend here. You just go check out the home run to fly ball percentage there, and it's down everywhere, but it's also down across baseball. His is more in a sustainable range of 8%, though. Gave up a couple the other day to Minnesota, so that's kind of raised that up just a little bit just recently. In fact, I like. There's a lot to see here that I like to see, though, especially from a fifth starter.
Yeah, absolutely. He's not somebody that cost you much, if anything, and he's still on a lot of waiver wires. He's 30% on Yahoo. And another kind of added bonus there, if you play on Yahoo, the starting or in a few different places, actually, starting pitcher and relief pitcher eligibility. That's really nice in points leagues when you're starting those
Absolutely.
starters in the relief spot. So just something to keep in mind there as well. Andrew Abbott is somebody where I've been kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop on him. He's been outperforming a lot of his advanced numbers. Pitching in Cincinnati is never a recipe for success, as you know, Jeff, with our
Yeah.
Reds. These guys give up a lot of homers, and it's been no different for Abbott this year. 157 homer per nine, 12% homer to fly ball, but he's got a 3.29 ERA. He has been pretty successful, but where are the strikeouts? This is a guy who was striking out. Sometimes it was over 40%, high 30% in the minors, 18% strikeout rate. Are those strikeouts coming? And also, is the regression monster coming for Andrew Abbott?
If the strikeouts don't come, yes, the regression monster will be there. It did show up, in fact, it already kind of arrived in a start on Tuesday against the Cardinals. Arenado progressed to the mean at the same time that Abbott regressed to the mean. So, yeah, and as the weather heats up in Great America, and I'm a little wary. Abbott wore down last year. He threw a good amount of innings between the majors and the minors, and I felt like in September was a pretty tough slog for him. And so I'm a little worried about the long term as well. So not someone I'm really targeting.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Just that ballpark. That ballpark is so tough,
Yes.
especially as it gets warm. I'm preaching to the choir here. Somebody that has been he might be my favorite player on this list, and maybe that's because I got him in Tout Wars and he's been helping me out with he's been kind of undoing the damage that Hunter Brown did for the first few weeks. But Mitchell Parker came out of nowhere. I remember watching his debut. My dad and I were watching. It was the Dodgers and the Nationals, and I look at baseball pretty regularly. I think it's safe to say we all do. And I didn't really know who Mitchell Parker was. And he comes up and he has 5 great innings against the Dodgers. And then he does it against Houston, and he's done it against Texas and Baltimore and Minnesota and Atlanta, most recently Atlanta. I didn't have the stones to put him in my starting lineup this week, but those who did got rewarded with 6 1/3, 3 earned runs, 6 strikeouts. He's looked excellent so far. I don't know if it's going to keep up to this extent, but there's nothing really in the profile that tells me like there's massive regression coming here. Everything that he's done looks, from what I'm seeing, fairly sustainable, right?
Yeah, I'd agree. I kind of like what I'm seeing from him a lot. Tough week. I don't blame you for sitting him this week, especially even the second start against the Guardians in Cleveland, which, it's playing more of a hitter's park this year. I think that's a tough one too. You hate not using a guy in a 2-start week, though. It's like one of those things like, I benched Tyler McGill after picking him up this week in the online championship, the 12-teamer as well. And missed out on a good start against the Dodgers and whatever he does over the weekend.
I picked him up in Tout, and the same thing. I put McGill on the bench. It's been a tough first couple days of the week here. Seeing
Yeah.
whatever it was, 13 innings of 3 runs. And I mean, McGill, I've been a McGill fan for a long time, baby DeGrom, as I've affectionately referred to him as. We talked about one of the Irvins. Let's talk about the other Irvin. And man, his most recent start for Jake Irvin here against the Braves, again, 10 strikeouts the other day, shutout ball over 6 innings. I don't know how much I expect this to continue, really, but another guy where if you just look at the numbers, there's nothing screaming regression at you. The BABIP, the left on base, the homer numbers, they're all pretty normal. Strikeout minus walk is increased, and it's because the walks are just beautiful, 4.4%.
Yeah.
Anything here really worrying for you in the profile with Jake Irvin, or is he somebody that you think is a little more interesting than people are giving him credit for?
I think he is interesting. I had him a little bit last year, and I almost kind of got whipsawed on him a little bit. I missed out on a couple of the early good ones, and as he came back down to earth, but people don't realize he made 24 starts last year. That he actually, took his lumps and held his own. I like what I'm seeing, and it's no coincidence that we're talking about 3 different national starters here on this list here this week. That's reason why they're hovering around 500, and that they're still a player in the wild card race. I think the strikeout upside is kind of limited. 10 Ks against the Braves, notwithstanding the other day. I thought that was anomalous, but maybe it's something that he's learning how to pitch a little bit better, seeing how his stuff plays. I still don't see him as like a dominant player, but I think he's, again, when we're looking for guys that we can just find, good spots to start in, good spot starters, streaming is hard to do. And even in 10s and 12s, it's hard to find great streamers sometimes. And, it's beyond impossible in a 15.
Yeah. If you're playing on Yahoo, 8% roster, Jake Irvin is getting no love over there. I think that he's somebody that is kind of interesting. Now, his next start coming against Cleveland might be a little bit tricky with the way that they've been swinging things, but I mean, he does mow down the Braves. There's nothing to say he couldn't do it in Cleveland, but that's a tricky one where, you mentioned the whipsaw kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Michael
and
King
then the Braves again after that too. So, we'll see. So, you usually don't want to see a same team in short succession.
Yeah, especially not that team. Let's talk about Jose Soriano, who I don't really know what to make of Jose Soriano. I've never been a huge fan, but it's hard to argue with what he's doing this year. Another guy where the numbers seem to be telling you the true story. There's nothing crazy here that says he's way overperforming. I'd like to see some more strikeouts out of him. Historically, we've seen those more in the minors, but 23.3% you can live with.
Sure.
10.5 on the walk rate's a little high, but overall, we're looking at a 3.61 ERA through his first 9 starts of the year. Bad team context. I'm not so sold on this one sustaining, even though the numbers tell me that they probably will. I just don't know if I want to be rostering Angels pitchers this year.
Yeah, fair point. You're not going to get a whole lot of bullpen support. That's one of the things to maybe take away from that there, unless you're a big buyer in the Hunter Strickland renaissance there. I don't know, trying to get games to Estevez. It could be pretty tricky there, or Luis Garcia, as we saw last week. But the difference on Soriano compared to some of these other pitchers on this list is he throws really hard. Average fastball's around 98 miles an hour. I think it's worth kind of looking at, especially when you look at who he's been facing. Faced Cleveland in his last start, did get the loss, but it's still 8-1 K to walk even in there. You can see reasons to kind of get interested in that there. At Texas before that, he's had some pretty tricky starts in there. A couple of easy marks in there too, like St. Louis, although St. Louis is no longer that team. They're starting to turn it around a little bit, but still, I think he's at least fun to try. Again, this is another team pitcher you want to probably pick your spots, and you're right. The team context is terrible.
Yeah, I don't want to read too much into that because, I'll have the other side of the argument. I was talking yesterday, and I've talked a lot about Jack Flaherty and how he's still available in too many leagues, and the pushback is the team context. The team context sucks. He's not going to get any wins. And I get it, but that can't be the only thing. It's a tricky balance. It definitely is a tricky balance. And you see guys, I forget, there was somebody who posted an example the other day. I think it was Reese Olson beside somebody who had 5 wins and close to a 5 ERA. And that's one of the benefits of my Tout Wars League where it's innings pitched. Don't have to worry about wins. Although I do have Ranger Suarez, so maybe I wouldn't mind having
right.
Having wins.
At least you're getting the good ratios to go with it there.
Yeah.
Soriano's next 2 starts are against Brian Wu and Dylan Cease, so that's kind of interesting. He may not be getting run support in those games.
Yeah, he may not. They're not going to be favored in either of those games for sure. Zack Littell is somebody that's been really, really, really good this year. And he's actually getting not really terribly lucky in terms of his BABIP at 331 is a little high. Nothing crazy, but it's a little bit high. Homers are fairly regular, 8% homer to fly ball. The ERA estimators are all really good. A team
Yeah,
context isn't amazing, but I feel like it will get better as the team moves
agreed.
on throughout the season. I don't know that Tampa's going to be a sub 500 team once they get Springs back and once the Rosarena gets going, etc. So I think this is a pretty good team overall. I think Littell is somebody where, we're talking about undervalued players. I think he's one of the most undervalued players. He's only available, or he's only rostered in 40% of Yahoo leagues. It's just crazy to me based on what we've seen from him. Another guy with that SPURP, starting pitcher, relief pitcher too.
Yeah, absolutely. I have him in a lot of leagues, and I would target him for sure. Over a 20% K minus walk percentage. You love seeing that.
Amazing.
It just you get both. You get the strikeouts and you get the lack of walks. Sign me up. You've even been a little bit unlucky with the 331 BABIP against. Unlucky also in terms of run support against the A's last night too. Got 10 Ks and still got the loss. I liked a lot of what I've seen from Littell this year. It's a little Rays devil magic for you there, but I'm on board.
Yeah, as soon as they took the devil out of their name, they just there was something there that happened. I think it was the year after they removed devil from the name. They went to the World Series, and
Yeah,
they've been a pain in my neck ever since. They've been a pain in the entire American League East ever since.
it's so funny. Like I talk to Yankees fans, they hate the Rays. The Red Sox, they hate the Rays. There's a lot of animus there.
I don't know what it is exactly. Maybe it's something to do with the ballpark, or I think mostly a lot of it is just the fact that I don't know what the head-to-head record is, but it feels like every series that the Blue Jays have wherever against the Rays, it's pretty bad stuff going back to the Carl Crawford,
Sure.
early in the Carl Crawford days, and probably even before that. As long as I've been watching baseball, really, it's been pretty bad stuff.
Johnny Gomes fighting whole teams, things like that.
That is a throwback, Johnny Gomes. My God,
Yes.
I actually kind of like those old Rays jerseys. I'm probably in the minority there, but when they were still the Devil Rays, and it
Yeah,
was a
yeah, I know
blue
what you're
and
talking
black.
about. I liked him too. Yeah.
Yeah, they were kind of interesting. I wish they would use those as a throwback here and there. I want to talk about one more guy, and that's Gavin Stone, who is having success, really good success this year, despite not having any of those strikeouts that we've seen from him in the minors that were kind of a calling card, 35% strikeout rate guy a lot of the time.
Mhm.
In his first cup of coffee last year, it was brutal. It was 14%. This year, a little bit better at 17%. He's having success in spite of those. So I guess my question is, if the strikeouts come, is Gavin Stone going to be one of those top tier pitchers? Is that really the only thing that's missing from him here?
Um, that's
Some
it.
swing and
The
a miss?
if is doing a lot of work there. But yeah, I mean, I think he's got a lot of that post type sleeper potential. I mean, his changeup seems like he's getting better and better with that. You got to refine that. I think that's part of the big, the big aspect there. There were people in on Stone, and of course, everybody and any Dodger prospect, you're going to draw some interest there. I
Yeah.
kind of wonder about what's going to happen once everybody comes back for the Dodgers. They're going to get Bobby Miller back at some point in time. Theoretically, they're going to get Kershaw at some point this year. What happens to Stone's spot in the rotation when that happens? I first think Paxton leaves first.
Yeah.
Sorry, Canada. But I think that Paxton is just begging to be lifted from that rotation. So, but after that, I mean, I do think Stone might be next. So that's the concern if they had two pitchers that come back. But you know what? Things have a way of working themselves out. They're going to, it's not like Tyler Glasnow's ever made it through a full season with like 170 innings or anything like that. Walker Buehler might be managed. They might go 6-man at some points in time. I'm in on Stone a little, but I also don't think you have to pay a whole lot to be in on him too, which is also pretty nice.
This is the year where nothing makes sense. All the safe guys got hurt, and
Yeah.
the guys that are still standing, I say while knocking on wood, are the Glasnows, the Sales, O'Neill
Yes.
Cruz, Jazz Chisholm, Buxton, like all these guys. I mean, Buxton's had a couple things. I think
Buxton's already been in an IL already, so we can't give him credit
I
there.
can't really count him, and we still have our Eloys, but it's
Oh
been
yeah.
kind of a reversal of everything that we're kind of used to here. Can we blame the amount of, I mean, blame might not be the right word, but is this in part due to the ball being messed with by the league, do you think? Is this why we're seeing so many guys with sub-3 ERAs? Have they done something this year again? They've been known to do it in the past.
I mean, we can only speculate, right? I mean, we don't know because MLB won't tell us. I haven't seen Dr. Meredith Wills tweeting out, "Hey, these balls are different. We have two different batches," or anything like that. And I think baseball's been trying to clamp that down anyhow. But Yeah, I mean, I got to think the ball is at least part of the explanation. Major League Baseball's earned that. They've earned that scrutiny right now, and so I think we should give it.
Yeah, it's not something we can really know. I remember talking with Eno a couple years ago when I first met him at the first time I was at First Pitch, and he was saying that the league was very weird about giving samples of balls, and you had to go in and buy a foul ball from a fan
Right.
or find one that was lying around somewhere because they weren't really trying to give them up, which probably tells us all we need to know right there. Before I let you out of here, Jeff, I want to ask you, out of all the pitchers we talked about today, who do you buy the most, and who do you absolutely fade the most from this list?
Trevor Williams is the fade.
Yeah.
Sorry, Trevor. Buy the most is Tanner Houck. See, who else would I buy them? I think Alec Marsh, maybe.
Yeah.
And Littell. Oh, Zack Littell. I buy him too. Now, again, job security is a little smidge of a concern with him once that Tampa Bay gets all their pitchers back. But I think that's more of a if instead of a when. But we'll see about that.
Yeah, I agree. Littell's been so good, and I think once that BABIP comes around for him, which probably it will come down a little bit, we'll see maybe an even better result from him. But Jeff, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's great to get you on the new show.
Hey, happy to be on, and tell everybody we're doing a home and away. You're going to join me on the RotoWire podcast on Thursday. We'll be live streaming at 4:30 Eastern time. So if you can't get enough another cup of Joe, well, come on aboard. We're going to be talking surprise hitters, so we'll change up the topic a little bit there.
Absolutely. That'll be a lot of fun. It's always great. 2 times on RotoWire in 1 week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you're checking out Jeff, everything he's doing at RotoWire, at Jeff_Erickson. A lot of it gets tweeted out, but also check out the website and the podcast. Jeff's on there multiple times a week, and you hear a ton of different voices. I saw James Anderson doing a prospect mailbag today, so there's always some great stuff to check out in the feed. If you want to follow along with what I'm doing, Joe Rico99 over on Twitter. You'll find my notes, my podcast, things I do at Fantasy Pros, all that great stuff over there. But we'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll be talking about everything that happened on Wednesday's slate. Until then, everybody take care and have a great night.